You have found the season debut of the Behind the Lines podcast. Welcome in, everybody. My name is Stephen Andress, managing editor at thelines.com. Joined each and every week throughout the NFL season on this show by the sportsbook trading manager at BetMGM, Christian Cipollini. If you've been watching us in past seasons, you know he is a wealth of information. Christian, how are you? It's great to have you back.
Excited to be back. Yeah, football right here on the corner. It's great
I
to see
love
you
it,
again.
man. I love it. On this show, we're going to go through the odds at BetMGM for every single game of the week one schedule. We're also going to have Christian share with us what the biggest liabilities are in terms of Super Bowl futures at BetMGM, as well as which teams have taken the most money to win the Super Bowl at the start of the season. Obviously, that may change as the year goes on. That market is open constantly, but going into the season, we'll take a look at that. But we will continue now with week one, Christian. And let's start with the Thursday night kickoff, the Detroit Lions at the Kansas City Chiefs, banner night in Arrowhead.
Yeah, it should be a good one for the opening night. The Chiefs and the Lions. Chiefs are 6.5-point favorites currently. Total's 54.5. That has bumped around that 7 back and forth, but right now holding strong at 6.5.
You know, one thing I just want to note about this game, I have not bet it at this point, but it's interesting to me that it is the biggest total on the board going into this week. The one thing I'm going to be looking at most for Kansas City and whether or not, you know, they're going to become a dynasty, be the first team since Tom Brady's Patriots to win back-to-back Super Bowls. They have two new tackles. Left and right tackle are completely new for this team. Still have a total of 54.5, the biggest on the board in week one. But we saw if Patrick Mahomes doesn't have a strong offensive line against a tough pass rush, he crumbled in the Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the other thing I'll note here is that, you know, Christian, you could probably speak to this. People love betting on the Chiefs. Like it's often one-way action on Patrick Mahomes, which has led to the Chiefs not having a winning record against the spread at home in each of the past 3 seasons. I think a lot of that is just how popular of a bet they are with the public.
Yeah, similar to how overs are always shaded more to the over side because the public side will take more bets. A similar thing happens with the Chiefs. We'll take more Chiefs bets. So typically the value will be on whoever the Chiefs are playing just because we will tend to shade a little bit more towards the Chiefs.
I'll say this too. It's not as if blindly fading the Chiefs has been extremely popular. It's been around 500, but the notion that the Chiefs are so good that they're going to be profitable covering the spread if you just bet them every week has not been the case even when they're playing at Arrowhead over the past 3 years. So just keep that in mind. You have to handicap each game as they go along. All right, Christian, let's move ahead here to the early window. It just popped into my head. The NFL Red Zone's back this week. Oh my God, I am so excited. We are back, Christian.
Yes.
We are so back.
8 games Sunday, 1:00 right there. Less than a
Cannot
week
wait
away.
for Scott Hansen to pull up the Octo box and tell us 8 hours of commercial-free football starts right now. But let's run through those odds for the early window on Sunday.
Panthers at Falcons. Falcons are 3.5-point favorites at home. That totals 39.5. Bengals at the Browns in an Ohio matchup. Bengals are 2.5-point favorites on the road. Totals 47.5. Jaguars at the Colts. Jaguars are 4.5-point favorites on the road here with a 45-point total. Bucks Vikings. Vikings are 6-point favorites with a 45.5-point total. Titans at Saints. Saints are 3-point favorites here at home. 41-point total. 49ers at the Steelers. 49ers are 2.5-point favorites here on the road with a 41-point total also. Cardinals Commanders. Commanders are 7-point favorites at home with a 38-point total. And last of the 1:00s, Texans Ravens. Ravens are 10-point favorites, and that totals 43.5.
Are the Cardinals tanking, Christian?
It seems like it, right?
Yeah, they're not saying it, but I just have to note that, you know, our staff at the Lines each week puts together our power rankings, and that process is not based on who we think is going to win the Super Bowl. Each week we do our power rankings based on who we would have favored on a neutral field, from 1 to 32. And I do not have the Washington Commanders as a top 20 team at this point going into the season. And yet, they are still somehow a touchdown favorite over the Cardinals. And I'm not saying that's a bad line. I just need to note right off the bat how putridly low Arizona is rated in the market by not only you as a trading team at BetMGM, but also the bettors who have moved this line from 6 to 7 since it opened. I mean, this has got to be a historically low rating for a football team in the NFL.
Yeah, I'd say so for sure. Like you said, the Commanders are not expected to be a very good team. There's definitely some people that like them as more of a surprise team, but yeah, a bad team being 7 point favorites is stunning. I mean, a lot of it plays into the fact that the Cardinals quarterback, for one, we don't even really know who it is, but two, it's either Josh Dobbs, who just got on the team a few weeks ago, or it's a rookie Clayton Tune. So, and then on top of that, they have a lot of roster issues going from there. So even if we were sure that quarterback was Kyler Murray, it wouldn't help too much. They just have a pretty bad roster all around.
A team with a win total of 6.5 is a 7 point favorite over a team with a win total of 4.5. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just, I've never seen it. It's just, we are in uncharted territory here with the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, you
Go
said
ahead.
before about the Chiefs and they always take more bets. I have a feeling as we get deeper and deeper into this season, it will be the opposite with the Cardinals because my guess as this season goes is we are going to struggle to write bets on that team all year.
I'm kind of curious if they're going to have a spread all year with less than a touchdown. I mean, I guess against the Rams, but other than the Rams, I'm very curious how many times they are going to be a double digit dog
Yeah.
this season, which the Texans are to start the year against Baltimore and that new look offense. That's certainly interesting. I will mention that I did put in a bet early this week on Carolina plus 3.5 against Atlanta. There's been a ton of market respect on Atlanta in futures going into the season. I just don't think that necessarily translates to winning by more than a field goal often with how slow Art Smith runs his tempo. They are among the bottom teams in the league last year in pace. Desmond Ritter, to me, maybe a bottom five quarterback. I need to see it first. So just the style of play and the quality of quarterback to me, I'm willing to pay to see if this new look Falcons team can start winning by margin, even though we are looking at new head coach, new defensive coordinator, rookie quarterback. Totals 39.5, and I'm getting more than a field goal. So I'm going to pay to see if the Falcons can win by margin there. That is an early week bet for me. All right, Christian, let's move on to the late window here. And let's get things started here with an NFC North rivalry.
Yeah, Packers Bears. Bears 1 point favorites here at home with a 43 point total. Then we have Raiders Broncos. Broncos are 3.5 point favorites with a 44 point total. Eagles Patriots. Eagles are 4 point favorites on the road with a 45 point total. Dolphins at Chargers. Chargers are 3 point favorites at home with a 51 point total. And last of the 4 o'clocks, Rams at Seahawks, where the Seahawks are 5.5 point favorites and the total's 46.
Packers plus 500 to win the NFC North was one of the bets I made at the beginning of the offseason. I think that this division is wide open. And again, I'm willing to pay to see if the team that had the number one pick and the worst record in the NFL last year. Now, I know they traded the pick, but they had it and they decided that they were going to get some picks for it. But they were the worst team in the league last year with a putrid defense. They've spent some money on defense. I still think there are huge red flags around Justin Fields as a passer of the football, great runner of the football, but I still think I think the jury's still out big time on whether Justin Fields can be a competent passer in the NFL. So the fact that we are immediately making them a favorite over Green Bay, you take home field advantage away here, you still have maybe Green Bay as the same rating as the Bears, maybe slightly better than the Bears. I'm higher on Green Bay. I'm not as concerned about Jordan Love. I think the rest of the roster around him is really strong. So whether you want to take the +1 or if you want to just take money line on Green Bay, I think both of those are solid for week one. Again, paying to see if a team with a lot of hype who was bad last year, can actually make that leap to start the season. That's kind of my angle there. And again, if you want to know when I'm locking in these bets, go to thelines.com, top right hand corner, hit the Discord button, and you can get staff bets throughout the NFL season, not only from me, but from the rest of our staff. Go to the Rolls server, hit the emojis, and you're going to get push notifications to your Discord app whenever anybody on our staff locks in an NFL bet. Packers money line was another one of my week one bets. All right, Christian, let's look at the primetime window here, both Sunday night and Monday night football.
Sunday night, Cowboys Giants. Cowboys are 3-point favorites on the road with a 46.5-point total. And Monday night football, Bills at the Jets, where the Bills are 2.5-point favorites on the road here and a 46.5-point total.
Notable, at least, that as we record around lunchtime Eastern time on Tuesday, you guys have the best price on Dallas for those that may want to back the Cowboys. You're not going to get better than -3, -115 across sportsbooks right now than what BetMGM is offering. I did bet that, and I am pretty high on the Cowboys as a regular season team. I'm skeptical about what their ceiling might be in the playoffs if they face an Eagles or a 49ers with Mike McCarthy calling the plays. But this roster is stacked. And I'm curious, Christian, just, off the top of your head, are we looking at a Cowboys team that is around the same power rating? If you were to do the same exercise where you put teams 1 to 32, and based on who you would have favored on a neutral field, I assume the Cowboys are again a top 3 team in the NFC for you guys.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of that just speaks to the level of competition that is in the NFC. But yeah, as you said, their roster is stacked. You can have all the questions you want about their previous history, and Dak had a lot of interception issues last year, but the roster as a whole, very good defense, explosive offense. They should be favored in a lot of games this season, judging by their schedule for one. And then, yeah, the conference is still pretty weak, 49ers and Eagles. And outside of that, yeah, it's Cowboys probably the very clear number 3.
Last question for you before we move on to Super Bowl futures. This Monday night game with Buffalo at the New York Jets, Aaron Rodgers' first game for the Jets. Just what's your opinion of the Jets? They had a strong defense last year. They obviously try to upgrade big time, going from whatever they were trotting out last year with Zach Wilson and Mike White to go to Aaron Rodgers. Are you just personally as high on the Jets as it seems a lot of the market was with slashing their Super Bowl odds when Rodgers arrived?
Yeah, I mean, the talk around them last season was really just that they were a quarterback away. It seemed that they had the defense, they had a lot of good weapons on offense, and that the quarterback was the one glaring issue that they had. So, in general, obviously, they've now fixed that. Aaron Rodgers obviously solves that problem, but their issue for the Super Bowl will be just their conference, and that they have to go through all these big teams to get there. Week to week, they should still be considered a top 10 team in the league, just judging by what we've seen from last season, and then the addition of Aaron Rodgers. Kind of similar to what you've been saying before, how you're willing to pay to see if some of these things are really the way they are. Week 1 is still a lot of unknowns. No one has seen what this team actually is, and some of it is a bit of a guessing game on just trying to see where we can plug that in. There might be times where we look back at Week 7 and say, how the hell was this team a a 2-point dog, or it might go the opposite way. We might think how are they how are they a 2-point dog? But so we'll see what changes come as it goes, and we'll see what this team actually looks like. For now, expect it to be pretty good.
And for the novice bettors out there, just so we kind of do a little bit of translation on these odds, for all the hype of the Jets, the fact that they're 2.5-point dogs at home against Buffalo means they would be how many points below Buffalo on a neutral field?
Yeah, they probably be about 5.5-point dogs right now at that point. Yeah, maybe a little bit less.
Yeah, just in that dead window area between 4.5 and 6, right?
Yeah, that's probably where it would go right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important for everybody to realize that, all the Jets hype and the Bills are still significantly rated higher than them going into the season. Maybe you don't agree with that, but that's the reality, right, Christian?
Yeah, Week 1, there might be times where if you might be able to just see something that isn't that we can't really see or that we haven't seen yet. And if you're sitting there going, this Jets team's going to be really good, well, you got 2.5 points at home here, so you're in a good spot. But yeah, it's still unknown.
My biggest piece of advice for people out there for week one is that, keep in mind that these lines have been up for a very long time at this
Yes.
point, and that any potential for a line being incorrect is very low at this point because the professional bettors have had plenty of time to bet into these numbers. So if really what you should be doing is trying to figure out if you have an opinion of a team that you feel is vastly different than what the market thinks, because that's going to happen in week one from time to time. And if you're
Yeah.
right, then you're going to get a really good price on that team in week one. Now, if you're wrong, that's the game. But for me, I try to find a couple of teams that I am higher on than the rest of the market going into week one and try to exercise that opinion. The Packers over the Bears was a great example of that for me. Plus money on the money line for that was solid for me. And again, I think I'm lower on the Jets than most people going into the season, so I'm happy to take the Bills at less than a field goal here, even though they're on the road. Okay, Christian, finally, as we wrap up, let's take a look at Super Bowl futures going into the season. No surprise that the Kansas City Chiefs are the favorites. We'll kind of run down the board here before you let us know what teams have taken the most money and what your biggest liability is at BetMGM. But as far as the Super Bowl odds going into the season, the Kansas City Chiefs, again, favorite at 6-1. The Eagles, the second choice at 8-1. Buffalo Bills, the third choice at 9-1, followed by San Francisco at 10-1, Bengals at 11-1, Cowboys at 15-1, and then the Ravens and the Jets at 18-1. Everybody else longer than 20-1 odds. So, with that in mind, Christian, what teams have taken the most money at this point?
So those top three teams right now are our most bet on by a decent chunk. Our most bet on is the Bills, followed by the Eagles, and then very closely followed by the Chiefs. So those were the around early in the season. Those were the top three teams from last year, and they've opened the odds top three this year, and they're a big three in betting.
In your experience, how much do you think the Bills is just a product of New York having legal betting and it being a huge market in the country at this point?
Yeah, it plays a role for sure. But we did see this last year, so it was similar last year. Bills were one of our biggest bet teams. Same with the Chiefs. So a lot of times, the favorites are always going to take more bets, and then yeah, when it is in a state that we're live in, that's going to lead to it too. We're also live in Kansas, so I'm sure there's plenty of Chiefs bettors there. Live in Pennsylvania, plenty of Eagles fans that want to back their home team. So yeah, it definitely plays, but a lot of it's just also that they're one of the favorites.
But as we know, most bet teams doesn't necessarily equate to biggest liability, because those odds of the most bet teams tend to be among the favorites. And the longer the odds you get, the more it's going to hurt the book if that team hoists the Lombardi trophies. So the other way to phrase this is, which teams are Christian and his colleagues rooting against the most going into this season? Your biggest liability to win the Super Bowl, Christian?
Yeah, who were sweating this year. Yeah, we got two that were sweating. Well, maybe not so much sweating on this first one, but for a long shot team with our most liability is actually the Pittsburgh Steelers at 66-1 right now.
Wow.
Not as high in our most bet, but of these really, really long shot teams, they have, almost double the amount of bets that, other 66-1 teams have.
I can't say that it's a fair price, I would say,
Yeah.
because in doing our power rankings again to start the season, most of us had Pittsburgh as an above average team. Some of us had them, in the top 15, in that 12-13 range. So elite defense, ascending quarterback, perhaps plenty of good weapons around him. And I think a handful of pretty intelligent people think that the Bengals aren't an unbeatable team, evidenced by them almost losing a playoff game to the Ravens when Lamar Jackson wasn't even on the field. So We'll see. I mean, I think the Bengals in most years have a great ceiling, high ceiling, but also a floor where they could get in trouble if that O line is an issue again. So,
Yeah.
um, just what are your observations of these liabilities that you have, Christian?
Yeah, I mean this one in general, we're really not sweating the Steelers mostly just because the AFC is such a juggernaut. They
Yeah,
definitely could be a team that could surprise and have a good season, but I mean we got a long way till the Super Bowl, and I think at this point the book will be okay. We're okay to sweat this one out for sure. But I guess that'd be the angle there is this is a team that they think could surprise some people, but definitely a tough division.
I love it. Fantastic insight as always. I'm excited for another season. What is, just closing thought here, Christian? One thing that you have an opinion on of this NFL season that you want to share with the people, whether it's a team or a player, just something you feel strongly about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very strong about, at least when you're talking about the Super Bowl odds. Like, I think picking an NFC team that you like to go to the Super Bowl is a good one for a long shot. So our second biggest liability is actually the Detroit Lions. They're one of those teams on the outs looking in. I'd imagine a lot of that liability for one is just, we have a big presence in Michigan for sure, and the people want to back Detroit. But I'd imagine the other side of that angle is there's not really that many good teams in the NFC. So if you see a team like Detroit that you think is explosive and they're going to put it together this year and able to go on a run, well, they're really only going to have to beat, maybe just one of the Eagles or the 49ers or the Cowboys. Those are going to be teams that you'll be able to sneak through and beat them. Or at least have a good chance to beat them. You only have to beat those two as opposed to having to beat Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson. I can keep naming people. It's a lot harder on that side than the other side. So that's where I'm at this year. I know the Saints have like an incredibly easy schedule. I don't personally think that they'll be going to the Super Bowl, but another team right there that is probably going to be there in the NFC come the playoffs.
I think it's great advice for sure. I agree that the Saints probably make the playoffs based on the schedule, if not them, the Falcons, but it doesn't mean that I think they're going to do anything in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I agree with you there. But the point about the AFC being so loaded and trying to target maybe an NFC team is well put, because I will tell everybody that in my first run of my power rankings this year, among the top 10 teams, I only had 3 NFC teams. So it's a lot more wide open potentially there, especially if one of those teams suffers an injury like the Eagles.
Yep.
It just opens it up for everybody. So love it. Cannot wait for the opening kickoff between the Chiefs and the Lions. Cannot wait for the Octobox on Sunday. I know all of you can't wait as well. Thank you for watching. For Christian Cipollini, I'm Stephen Andress. We'll see you next week here on Behind the Lines.